Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for our informative and fun webinar on IoT and IoT toys. We thought that with Christmas fast approaching and a lot of people looking to give IoT toys and devices or receive them as well, that it's kind of a good time to do a little overview of the market and how to look at the devices and make sure ultimately that you are secure. So the goal of today's webinar is just to it's really informative to make sure everyone can evaluate IoT gifts that they give or get, and then know how to best secure them overall. So before we jump into it, we all work for IGI Cybersecurity, so to give you a little bit of an overview of the company. We were founded in 1986. Over the last few years, we've evolved to focus purely on cybersecurity, and we've built up a very large team of cybersecurity professionals and have a very robust bench from a services standpoint. I'm the channel account manager covering the Southeast, Jason Grinnell. But also joining me today on this call is our security VP, Tyler. I'll let Tyler introduce himself.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody, for being on the webinar with us today. My name is Tyler Ward. Relatively new to IGI over the past few months. Come from the federal sector, federal and military sector, served in the Air Force for a number of years, both overseas and back stateside within the cyberspace arena. Went to work out in the DC area, worked in Georgia for a few years with some different agencies, and then I came back over to the commercial sector because, well, we need help over here. Our customers need, big time support in cybersecurity. So I've been running incident response teams, red teams, blue teams, doing penetration testing, general security consulting for our clients, and then across a number of other different cybersecurity verticals. So happy to be here, and it's never a dull day at IGI. Whether it be incident response or reviewing new products and services and rolling things out to our customers. So thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Thanks, Tyler. And Tyler and his team, like we said, they have a great skill set around cybersecurity. So if you do need anything, feel free to reach out to myself. You'll see my contact info as well as Tyler's here at the end of the presentation. From an agenda standpoint, just a high level of why IoT is important, some of the different methods that hackers will use to attack IoT devices and networks, some of the risks associated with IoT gifts. We'll talk about the Christmas trifecta of IoT, which is the IoT toys, personal assistants, as well as cameras, and then just talk a little bit about how to protect yourself at home and at work.
So we're going to run this video real quick here just to give you an idea of the world that we live in 2018 and how dramatically things have changed. So we can go ahead and play this video. And what this video is, and this is, we don't know if it's a security researcher or a malicious attacker. It's on YouTube, so it's public knowledge. So we figured we'd show it to all of you. This is a drone or a quadcopter, however you want to call it. And what this is being used for is to hack into smart lighting in a business park. Now you'll be able to see the names of the businesses on this particular building. Funny enough, they are technology companies, but you can kind of see the lights flashing on and off, and they're being hacked remotely from the user of this drone or quadcopter. So the point behind this is everything's connected, everything is hackable, and we really need to rethink our strategy and what we are currently connecting to the internet. You can see the lights going on and off inside of this business park here. Okay. So as we move to our next slides here, we're going to go down some examples about why should we care about this thing called IoT, and that includes these toys and everything else in this mix. And 4 prime examples in recent history. Number 1 on the list is Stuxnet, right? We're going to go through and talk a little bit about Stuxnet if you haven't heard about it. Mirai, the Mirai botnet, Medtronic pacemakers, and Casino Fish Tank, right? So now the Internet of Things, they encompass smart TVs, homes, camera systems, thermostats, HVAC systems, and much, much more, as we can see here, all connected to the internet now. So our concern has grown exponentially with more IP addresses flooding the internet. Okay, so number one on our list is Stuxnet. So SCADA systems. SCADA systems are essentially supervisory control and data acquisition. That is what SCADA stands for. And these are the types of PLCs, the programmable logic controllers, that are found within power plants, nuclear power facilities, water treatment plants, street lighting, critical infrastructure. These types of SCADA systems are things that make up your Siemens and your Johnson control systems within your building, even some HVAC systems, right? So Stuxnet was an early example, and we're not going to get into attribution behind this, and there's great documentaries on Netflix about who is responsible for this and then some speculation behind it, but we're going to get into what this essentially was, right? This was an IoT compromise. This was an Iranian centrifuge, or actually a series of Iranian centrifuges that were compromised by malware that specifically targeted those programmable logic controllers, right? And this attack actually resulted in massive physical damage of the centrifuges within these power plants around Iran, and overnight, software was weaponized, right? So all of a sudden, software was no longer this mysterious thing that lived in the matrix, and attacks on it were contained within, and now all of a sudden, SCADA systems were vulnerable to cyber attacks, and they could literally explode, right? So it changed the entire landscape of cybersecurity and really woke everybody up, woke up the military, woke up foreign governments and private companies. Somebody had to do something about this, right? So moving parts are now controlled by computers, and they're connected to the internet. That's not always a good thing, okay? Next up on our list is the Mirai botnet. So what is a botnet? There's the example or the definition of a botnet up here. It is essentially a network of private computers or public computers, if you will, that are compromised, infected with malicious software, malware, and controlled by a central authority or multiple authorities to do something, right? And whether that something be, to launch a denial of service attack, or spread malware, or serve as a communication link between two organizations, encrypt those channels, whatever the case may be. Botnets are for hire. You can go on the dark web and you can contract a botnet to take down a website, a web server, whatever the case may be. I hope nobody's getting any ideas to do that right now, but you could if you wanted to. In this particular botnet, why this was so important is this kicked the country of Liberia offline. An entire country. Now, why is it on our list for IoT? Because the majority of devices that were compromised were unsecured IP cameras and routers that were compromised due to default credentials, right? So by compromising all of these new IoT devices, these camera systems, their computing power was harnessed and used to launch a series of attacks on other sources, one being the country of Liberia. So this massive compilation of infected cameras, routers, and other IoT devices, it acted as a botnet full of zombie nodes, if you will, simply awaiting instructions to go ahead and attack a single or multiple targets. So this was a very big one. It took a whole country offline. It almost shut down the entire internet, actually. It was so big. And so definitely problems with that. Our next one on this list here, pacemakers connected to the internet. Some things just shouldn't be connected, right? In our professional opinion, things need to be evaluated a little bit closer. In this case, lucky enough for us, or whoever had these pacemakers or still has them, security researchers actually found this before a successful attack could be mounted, thankfully, right? Internet-connected pacemakers. This was probably a bad idea to begin with. However, somebody did it. Why? They were connected to the internet to receive software and firmware updates, right? So, we're turning into an Iron Man society, which, the nerd side of us is not opposed to, but still, pacemakers connected to the internet, we may want to be a little bit careful about that. So the vulnerabilities in these pacemakers enabled security researchers to actually shut down the functions of the pacemaker, in some cases turn them off completely, right? So what could happen if these were attacked? People could actually be injured or killed, right? Medical devices right now are being connected to the internet more now than ever before, right? So some examples of IoT devices in the medical space that are actually now receiving IP addresses and being connected are insulin delivery systems, activity and vitals tracking systems, connected inhalers, ingestible sensors, actual capsules that you can swallow that communicate with your smartphone app, that relay health information. And then latest is contact lenses that are connected to the internet. So connected contact lenses. So very interesting things happening with medical devices. Okay, so one of the more Hollywood-esque type hacks in recent history was one that involved a particular casino and a fish tank. Attackers were able to hack into the temperature, food, and cleanliness sensors on this fish tank from a remote location. They hacked into the temperature sensors that were connected to the internet, and they used the fish tank as a staging area to infiltrate other areas of the casino. Right, so they used this as a pivot point to move laterally throughout the casino, and they actually siphoned off gigabytes of sensitive data. So they actually stole sensitive information and routed it back through a fish tank. So we call this the sucker fish attack. So just a testament to what we're connecting to the internet, we have to be very careful in a business setting, in a home setting. And we'll get more into all that as we go through the list here. So what's changed, right? I mean, we haven't always had IoT devices, but they're not anything too new. The stigma behind them is new. However, devices have been connected to the internet since the internet was built, since DARPA was invented. We've had devices connected to the internet that could be considered IoT devices. Now, why are all of them getting hacked into? There are a number of different reasons. One of the bigger reasons is because we just have so much more in IoT devices that are now connected to the internet. However, another reason is a little tool that us pen testers love. It's called Shodan. Shodan.io, also called the world's most dangerous search engine. Attackers use it. We use it from a professional standpoint to show organizations how they're exposed and to find certain interesting artifacts on the internet. So before Shodan, cyber criminals, they kind of had to know what they were looking for to find an IoT device. They needed to know an IP address. They needed to know a geolocation. They needed some information to start scanning the web and find open ports and then be able to manually identify these things, which is not an easy task, right? 10, 15 years ago, not an easy task. Now, they go online, they go on Shodan, and they browse, just like Google. You could type in different searches to find webcams, internet-connected baby monitors, HVAC systems, internet-connected gas and fuel pumps, power stations, web servers, smart homes, smart refrigerators, even fish tanks in some cases, right? So attackers are using this tool to seek out vulnerable IoT devices as entry points into networks or to register them on their botnet, right? If they have weak credentials and are easily exploitable, they're registering them as a bot or using them as some kind of a staging point. So there are currently millions of devices that are online and visible in Shodan, right? One could be yours, one could be the IP camera of your company, the other one could be the fish tank of that casino, right? So a number of different things that are on the site that have just expedited the methods that attackers are using to locate these devices. So really, it's really grown since the introduction of Shodan.
So now that we've heard about all the crazy ways we can be attacked, turning our attention a little bit to the Internet of Toys. So everyone's familiar with IoT devices. They're pretty much pervasive in our life right now. But unlike regular toys, IoT toys can collect, use, and share information via the internet, which makes them pretty dangerous from a child's safety and personal identifiable information standpoint. And a lot of these existing toy companies and startups are eagerly innovating in this area, as this could really become the largest market for them with an increasing number of customers. And it's not all bleak. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with IoT toys that can help in the development of science, technology, engineering, and even mathematics, so like the STEM skills for students. But this market, IoT toys are expected to make up about 18% of the overall 2018 Christmas market for toys, and that's growing pretty rapidly. Compound annual growth rate of about 36% per year, and by 2028, it should be around $70 million, and that's just for the overall IoT toy market. So, pretty large market that's growing fast. And because of that, there's a lot of unsecure devices that are coming out for children. And last year, the FBI put out a warning. So the Bureau's Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is IC3, issued a consumer notice on its website, and its aim was to encourage consumers to consider cybersecurity prior to introducing smart, interactive, internet-connected toys into their homes or trusted environments. Because many of these high-tech toys can carry on a conversation, it's very possible, even likely, the FBI says that those mics could be listening to any conversation. So if the toy hears something, they could also be transmitting that data to a remote server. It's cause for concern. It's not always going to be a bad thing, but just something to really be aware of before you start bringing these items into your home and connecting them up to your local Wi-Fi or phones. And again, another risk though is that the PII data about children could also be collected. So if a connected toy happens to leak details like the child's name, address, phone number, that creates an opportunity for identity theft. As well as leaked GPS data could allow someone to pinpoint your kid's physical location, which is really concerning. So when you're looking at these IoT toys and evaluating them and trying to balance what the risks are, some points to kind of think about and consider. So one of the potential risk factors is unsecured wireless connections. Some IoT toys can connect to smartphone apps without any authentication at all. So a user could download a free app and connect directly with the child playing with that individual toy, as long as they're in Bluetooth range, which typically is between 15 and 30 meters. Probably not a huge concern if you're in a standalone home. You're probably not too worried about someone hiding in the bushes, but if you're living in a condo or an apartment complex, there's a lot of neighbors within that range as well, and you may not know all of them. There was a Hello Barbie that would automatically connect to any Wi-Fi named Barbie. So people could just set up a Wi-Fi and unfortunately, someone may be connecting to an unsecured Wi-Fi where there's an actor looking to do harm. Also, tracking movements. So some of these toys have GPS built in, which was brought up on that FBI report, and those reveal potentially a child's location. The Consumer Council of Norway actually found that smartwatches marketed to children were storing and transmitting locations without encryption, which basically allowed strangers to track a child's movements. Germany actually banned the sales of children's smartwatches based on this. Poor data protection is also a huge concern as well, because a lot of these are connecting, they have microphones and they have cameras on them, so they're collecting information. And a lot of these toy manufacturers don't always ensure the data is stored and transmitted securely, even when there's laws requiring it. Earlier this year, toy maker VTech was fined $650,000 for failing to fulfill its promises to encrypt private data and for violating U.S. laws protecting children's privacy. And then finally, one of the other kind of gray areas here is working with third parties. So the majority of these toys are also sharing information with third parties for marketing purposes or various other reasons, such as alliance work as well. But it's akin to Facebook sharing its user data with Cambridge Analytics. One toy company did come under fire for this, and it was because of the My Friend Kayla doll was programmed to discuss with kids their favorite Disney movies. So in effect, it was almost like product placement, and it wasn't something that was initially disclosed to parents. So I think a lot of people did have some issues with that. And so some of these toys that are out there, there's some that have just glaring vulnerabilities and are easily open to hacks, while there's other ones out there that are much safer and limit the access to some of these like darker areas. One of the first ones though that definitely has some issues is My Friend Kayla, which I mentioned previously. So Germany's Federal Network Agency classified Kayla as an illegal espionage apparatus. As a result, retailers and owners could face fines if they continue to stock or fail to permanently disable the wireless connection. The reason why is because the Bluetooth was always on and could in fact be used as a surveillance tool. So there was no password to protect the Bluetooth connection. So anyone could get access to the dial if they had a Bluetooth phone or device that was within Bluetooth radius of the particular toy, listen in on conversations as well as speaking directly to the child playing with it. Most people probably don't want their kids playing with something like My Friend Kayla with pretty much zero security on it. Another example of just overall bad, like sloppy data practices is Cloud Pets. So Cloud Pets has exposed the personal info of more than 800,000 customers and some 2 million voice recordings, many of them from kids. So the toy animals that are made by Cloud Pets have the ability to store and replay voice messages sent to them via the internet. So ideally what that means is a traveling parent, for instance, like someone traveling for work or even a deployed military member could send a message to the child's teddy bear at home, and then the kid can replay it while they're playing with their bear. But since at least Christmas of last year, info on the Cloud Pets server, including customers' login and password info and voice recordings, was stored in an exposed database, easily accessible to anyone who knew where to look. And because of that, you see this tweet up here, and it's because of the open accessibility of this database, people were able to go in and get passwords and usernames and just send whatever messages they wanted to anyone owning these particular animals. So definitely a concern there as far as failing to protect customer data. But then there's some of these other big brand name companies like Nintendo, Microsoft, PlayStation, which have more of a vested interest in consumer rights and making sure that they are protecting the security of the individuals using them, because they have such big brand names to protect and they want to stay out of the news for the most part. Like most of these gaming platforms, for instance, they use encryption, they have automatic updates, the companies manage the security vulnerabilities on them, and most of them have pretty robust parental controls if you dig around a bit, and you can figure out how to limit the child's access to certain games or content that you wouldn't want them to have, as well as limiting the amount of time that they can be on certain platforms. And another concern is you have your credit card set up to buy games or movies or music on these. So make sure you're using stuff like two-factor authentication to make sure no one's stealing that login info and buying a whole bunch of games or movies on your credit card, because that could get pretty expensive. One of the cooler IoT toys I came across was the Harry Potter Kano coding kit. And so it allows kids to learn to code while pretending to be Harry or Hermione through step-by-step challenges. And then the kids get to use a cool IoT wand to kind of make magic on their computers or tablets that they use to do the challenges on. So kind of some cool stuff, and that really plays into the STEM part of IoT kids toys, helping people to learn more. So I'm a new father, and so I did a lot of research on baby and home cameras recently, and there's definitely a lot out there on the market. If you just go to Amazon, there's probably close to 100 different baby and home cameras, and a lot of them are these knockoffs on Amazon for $19.99, and that's what this Freddy baby monitor is. And an example of kind of using an off-brand where you don't know who manufactures it and where the information is being stored. Is it a server in the US? Is it a server in China? Who knows? And what the Freddy baby monitor is bad at is that it has a history of being easily hacked because it uses a default password of 123. and it doesn't prompt you to ever change that. So a lot of people just continue to use that default password, not knowing any better, whereas someone could download the app and easily access that home camera. They also don't have a privacy policy either for their customers. So a lot of concern with using the Freddy Baby camera. One of the things in just researching this for this webinar is I found that the Ring Smart doorbell has an issue with it, and that's something that I had kind of looked at for a time. So that's a security flaw that's known, and I don't believe that they've disclosed that it's out there, but I don't think they've corrected the bug. Basically, what the vulnerability does is it lets people who previously had access to a Ring door camera still use it even after the password has changed. So let's say you have an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or a roommate that has that password. Well, you may change the password after they move out, but they'll still have access to the camera to see who's coming and going from that particular apartment or house, which is definitely concerning if that's your place. But there's also some solid cameras out there like Blink, the Netgear Arlo Q. These are all fairly secure cameras. They have enough security on them to prevent the kid down the street from hacking into them and kind of seeing what's going on within your house. Ultimately, none of these cameras are 100% secure. So just be aware and do the best you can to make sure you're dealing with the security and the vulnerabilities on them. And then finally, the personal assistant. These are pretty much prevalent in homes nowadays, from the Google Home to Alexa. There's over 20 million Echoes in American homes right now, which is the little tiny like Alexa home dot, which is pretty crazy because these things are actively always listening. Amazon denies that Alexa records every sound, but there are multiple ways in which the device's security can be breached. So researchers have been kind of working with these personal assistants for some time. And with Alexa, for instance, they found that they can exploit the reprompt feature by creating an Amazon app that turns off notifications that the device is actively listening. So someone could potentially have this app, if the wrong person creates this app and you download it and start using it, they could potentially enter your home through the speaker and listen in to what's going on within that house, and you don't have the notifications from the smart speaker that it's actively listening. And then one of the cooler things I came across was dolphin attacks. So apparently over the last few years, researchers in China and the US have begun demonstrating that they can send hidden commands that are undetectable to the human ear to Siri, to Alexa, and to Google Assistant. And the researchers have been able to secretly activate the AI on smartphones and smart speakers, making them do stuff like dial phone numbers or open websites. So ultimately, in the wrong hands, the technology could be used to unlock doors, wire money, or buy stuff online simply with music playing over the radio. And currently, there's no U.S. law against broadcasting subliminal messages to people or machines, for that matter. So something to be aware of, and I'm sure with all the money and R&D that Google and Amazon and Apple have, that's something that hopefully they'll look to patch and make sure that's not a vulnerability at some point. So as you're getting these IoT toys and devices for your friends and family, or you're receiving them, just some steps to kind of ensure that you are doing the most to protect yourself. So look at who the manufacturer is. Is it someone reputable, or is it the $19.99 knockoff that saves you 50% off of Amazon? So look for the reputable company names like Amazon, Google, Bose, Apple. A lot of these companies already have patching solutions already in place. So in the event that a vulnerability does arise, they can quickly mitigate the issue. So it may cost more upfront, but the savings from a potential security breach are well worth it. And then try to figure out if there are known vulnerabilities for this particular product. You can just Google the product and maybe Google the product's name along with the vulnerability. And if within the top 5 search results there are known vulnerabilities and there's no current patches for those, that's probably a product to stay away from. And then also making sure that the devices are updating automatically so you don't have to go out and manually update those, because most people aren't going to do that with a connected IoT device. I know I probably wouldn't unless I had a lot of extra time on my hands. And then finally, change the default password. Don't use the 123. Make sure it's something complex, something that's easy to remember, or use a password manager to generate unique passwords and keep track of everything. I know that's made my life a lot easier using a password manager solution.
Thanks, Jason. While you were talking, I was making sure my daughter did not have a My Friend Kayla. However, the Harry Potter coding kit is actually really cool. I think I'm going to go ahead and invest one of those for myself. Maybe one for my kid too. So with all the things that we just talked about here, I'm sure everybody is sufficiently freaked out. There are some really, really super creepy toys out there for kids, and ones that you probably don't even want in your home, right? Ultimately, you make that decision. And we talk about having a home and a corporate policy, right? So we want to control IoT devices at home. We want to control IoT devices at your organization, or you have to control those devices at your organization. Your home policy can be something informal. It doesn't have to be a written dossier that your children have to read. It can be a light policy, just a well-known series of things that happen before you introduce something into your home. You should ensure that your family is aware of these threats that IoT devices place on your family and on your security and your privacy, and start to consider what may be exposing, what these devices may be exposing to the outside world or to attackers or to companies. Like Jason mentioned, a lot of these times, the device itself may be secure and there may not be a proven route of entry into these devices logically, right, or physically. However, on the other side, whoever is collecting your data, we hear about breaches all the time. So this data is going somewhere. Who is it going to? And is the company reputable? Are they performing security best practices on their side? Because it doesn't matter if the device has great security, if their server is wide open to the internet or unsecured and has an unencrypted database and is hacked into, then you've got a problem, and so do other, millions of other people. So for your home policies, you realize that attackers are known to target corporate executives and anyone with administrative privileges, right? And that targeting does not stop at the workplace. That carries into the home. It carries to you when you're on vacation or on a work trip. Cyber criminals don't abide by the cyber rules of engagement. They don't have rules of engagement. If they can compromise you at your home or at work, they're going to take the path of least resistance to get to you or to get to your company, right? So you want to check your home networks from the outside, just like an attacker, or call a third party like IGI to come and assess your external security from your home, right, or from your place of business, right, to run an assessment to determine what is exposed. Also, you may want to consider putting your home IoT devices onto a separate network completely, so that they can't chat with your other maybe more sensitive devices, your laptop that you may take home from work, or your other computers in your environment. Also, turn them off when not in use. If you're not using your Amazon Alexa or your Google Home device or anything else, turn them off when they're not in use. If you're sitting there with a camera facing towards you all the time with a microphone on it, you may want to consider turning those off when you're not using them. Corporate policy, right? So this is a very, very important one. Number one on this list is know what you have. A lot of organizations, especially the organizations that we go to and perform penetration testing, they have no idea that some of these devices were on their network. They didn't know that one of their employees had brought in a home router or an IoT device, a camera system for their organization. Now it has exposed them to the outside. Or the IT director, the IT administrators are setting up IP-based cameras, and there's no security oversight over those. And those are entryways into your environment. So, either conduct that internally or have a third party perform an assessment of that environment to demonstrate your technological footprint to the outside. What can attackers see? What are the routes of entry? Right? So conduct those asset inventories, discover those IoT devices that are unauthorized. People plug things in all the time, maybe a smart TV, Rogue camera, whatever the case may be. You want to have a policy and a procedure for introducing new devices into your network. And those can include IoT devices. You can incorporate this into your process for introducing a new server or a workstation or a firewall. It's the same thing. Know what you have and establish a process and a policy for introducing anything new to include a security review, right? So you want to understand with those policies and procedures, what does the device do? What is the business requirement, right? Does it have a legitimate business purpose, or is it just something that somebody wants? What are the security implications of implementing that device into your environment? What does this expose to the world, and where is your data going? Think about all those things, review those devices before they make them into your homes or into your place of business. Organizations like the NSA and other federal entities, they have strict policies around smart devices in the workplace. Simply put, you can't have them unless there's some extenuating circumstance, because it can be used to spy on your company, exfiltrate data, serve as a mounting point for other attacks, just like that fish tank in that casino. Simply put, if you're worried about your organization and what is exposed to the outside world, contact IGI for a security review or a security assessment. If they're there, we're going to find them. If you don't have that internal capabilities, give us a call. We're glad to do it.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yep. Thanks, Jade.
So we all have enough to worry about during the holiday season with lots of family members running around the house fueled by eggnog and candy. Don't let cybersecurity add yet another thing to your checklist. Follow these simple security tips to ensure you have a carefree holiday for you and your loved ones. Contact me if you're interested in planning your 2019 cybersecurity strategy and want to see how IGI can assist. As I mentioned at the beginning, I do cover the Southeast, but we have field channel account managers and inside channel account managers that cover the U.S. So if you're outside of the Southeast, reach out to me anyways, and I'll connect you with the right person on our team to have that conversation with. Again, thanks for joining, and have a great holiday season. We'll talk to you next time. Does anyone have any questions actually before we log off? Tyler and myself will stay on, so if anyone does have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put something in the chat box as well.